listeners, Harika here, and I'm super excited to welcome you to UppTalk. If you're ready to learn and get your hands work wonders in the world of information technology, then you're in the right place. When I say UppTalk, we are not just another edtech company. Consider we are your learning partner committed to unlocking your full potential. Whether you're stepping into the world of technology for the first time or looking to advance your career, we provide top-tier, hands-on courses to build up your career. Let's take our first step towards learning here and explore it.
Yesterday, we have created some basic calibrated fields. You see here, demographic basic data is there, and we have used a calibrated field function called concatenation. Format text, format date, substring. I think in substring we have used. I will just walk through on those and go for further level of gradient, calibrated fields. Concatenation, concatenation. What does concatenation does? Is it actually merges all the values, merges values. When I say values, it only merges extra values. It won't merge any kind of numeric and one text value and one date value. It will not match. Congratulation function will be looking only for the fields that are of text type, and then they can get matched. Now employee and employee name got matched here. See how we have matched. I have created a calculator with concatenation as a function, and then employee is selected, and then there is a delivered field called single space, which actually gives a space. We have single space and full name. I have taken and submitted the calculated field, and then I have used the calculator fields in my report. There are two ways of using calibrated fields, or two ways of creating the calibrated fields. One is the search bar. We will be creating a calculated field, which can be used across the tenant. When you create a calculated field in the tenant from search bar, it means that the calculated field can be used across the tenant. But there are certain, Another option that we have is we can create a calculated fields from the report. From the report, we have an option to create a calculated field, and when you create calculated fields from the report, which is here, CFD calculate field for report. When you create a calculated field with this option, which means that you are making your calculated field restricted to the report you have because that calibrated field is specific to that report. That is the reason why you have gone here and you have created for reporting purpose, which cannot be accessed to another report. When you create a calculated field with this option, this cannot be searched from the search bar. You cannot find this calculated field from the search. Also, you cannot use this calculated fields in another reports or any other areas. When you create a calculated field from the report with create a calculated field from the report, which means that that is available only for that particular report. It cannot be used or it cannot be utilized in any other report or any other purpose when you create a calculated field from search bar. Now, when you create a calculated field from search bar, which means that it can be used across the tenant and multiple reports can be added, and wherever calculated field can be used. When you create a calculated field At tenant level, you can use the calculated field across the tenant. You can add it to the scheduled jobs. You can add it to any kind of existing character. All the things that you can perform when you create a calculated field from the search bar. Amit, if you create it from the report, and if you're sharing the report with somebody, they get access to the calculated field they can access. But they also can access only within that report. They cannot use it. It cannot be used to any other report or any other area of I'm using this concatenation function. This concatenation used to dog concatenate the text values. But it cannot concatenate numeric values, unit values, all these things it cannot concatenate. Only text values will be concatenated. You see here just concatenated employee and full name, and it has given this thing. Similarly, if you see here, these are regular delivered fields, and this is the calculated field that I have created format text one. When I've used this one, this first name, this entire employee name has been converted to uppercase. Regular delivered fields will be populated in the proper case. But I've used a function called format text that actually updates your value with uppercase. How I've done that is, I'm sorry for the concat field. Can we use only text values? Yes, only text. You cannot use any other. But employee is kind of a number, right? Employee is text only. It's text. Employee is text. Got it. Employee can be alphanumeric. Here, in this case, we are seeing a number. But generally, employee, it can be alphanumeric. It can be numeric. It can be alpha also. There's a reason why your case got employed as a text value. You can see here the format text which I've selected. I've selected the source name as a full legal name. And once you select the full name, you'll be getting options here. And you'll be selecting uppercase for transforming or formatting the text value. And similarly substring. These are the fields that I've used. Substring is one thing that I've used again. Cost center is something you know. We have a cost center. There will be a cost center code before cost center, right? We try to get that cost center code that it has, and we use that in the report. Cost center we've taken, and we've gone with the fixed position of the character field. Text field we've taken as cost center and fixed position because we wanted to have only the coded as it uses right in the color in the cost center. Let's say if it uses 6 characters, we'll be pulling those 6 characters through fixed position. Actually, you can give the fixed position and starting position is 1 and where you wanted to stop the You know the field retrieval. You can give it 6 that it looks for 6 characters and it will return. Substring is nothing but which breaks the text values which breaks and give the final output. Here, what it is doing is it is actually looking for first 5 characters of this cost center and then you look for 5 characters and it will complete the. Now, if you see how the code will be returning. In the cost center wrote 406,000 error services and now based on the substring that we have used here, it has got 406,000. Which is based on the characters that we have. And there is one more function that we have used, format date. If you see here, hire date is len 2000. Now we have used format date function which has written data like this. This is nothing but format date function. Anything can be formatted. You know this is something related to format date. We have format number, format text. We have certain character functions which can be used according to the need. Now format hire date. I have selected hire date. I have selected hire date. I have selected format mask as one of the, inbuilt another function. And then once you go for format mask, you should be getting a format, this thing, where you can give the kind of proper syntax. If you wanted to look at the syntax, what are the values that are available? You can just click on this strip. Then you should be seeing what are the characters that will be returning. We will use that. That's all. We have created format date, but we'll create a few more things now. Are these clear? Do you have any questions? No, Amit, that's good. Thank you. Now probably we'll go further. Other character functions. Did you get a chance to create any character fields in your current experience? Rimfa. I did like one or two. One was a little complicated. I had to take help from my colleagues. The other was like concatenation. Oh, then you're aware of. But, like I, had few doubts whether we can concatenate numbers like that. It will not return numbers and the value, it will only be text values. But if you have a number that needs to be concatenated, what you can do is you can convert that number to text and call the text value to your this thing. You have a function called convert number to text that can be used in order to, if you want it, there is no option for you. In order to concatenate, we can do that. We're going to create a few more things probably today. We have this many functions we don't have a number, we have text to number. We have text to number, but not number to text. Today we'll be covering the maximum, the USP for calculating good functions across the reporting. Now, let's say if you want to return any kind of value that is sitting in the related business object, what you'll be doing, you'll be adding a related business object and then add the value. But what if you don't have a chance to actually, to handle the report that getting the fields created for that one? Let's see add to this report. I'm showing how it works. Now I have a report under worker business object. Now if I wanted to have manager employee ID in the report, what options you will get? What options you have to get manager employee ID? This report is built on worker right. Now I wanted to get employee of manager. How do you get that? Any guess? Super. Like we have to check in the business object if there's any related business objects like super, org name or something like that. Manager name manager, ID that I wanted to get. But how do you use here? You added a related business object as manager and was able to get employee ID from the field. But what if you don't want to use the related field? You wanted to use worker as a primary business object for the calculated fields to have your, unique primary business object as a worker and no other secondary business object should have in the report. When you wanted to maintain such things like getting value from a business object, which actually when you create a calculated field, you can use that related business object field in the primary business object only. In the example that I was seeing you in the worker, if you wanted to get any dependent information or anything related to benefit information or anything related to employee reviews, you definitely wanted to. You have an option to actually edit that particular report and add that particular value and then run this one. But you have an option to actually use related and from there you can give. But what if you don't have an option to actually use for work any other business object in the report, but it has to be a worker? From worker only, you need to get employee. But let's see if there is any delivered field called manager, employee that without the value. I need to use worker. See if worker has any kind of delivered field called manager ID. If that exists, you can use this one. Manager ID comes in worker, you can actually create. Worker has manager ID field, but I think that is a kind of delivered field from here. Let's see if this runs. Both come same. This exists. We don't have dependent. We have dependence as a kind of multi-instance which will be getting you multiple values. But we wanted to have dependent. I can use dependent as a related business object. I can use dependence as a kind of related business object. I can have dependent, but I wanted to have this to be from worker, which is not possible. Let's say if I copy here, you will not get. The dependent will not get. In order to have this, instead of using related business object, there is a demand for you to actually use it in a single report. What you can do is there is a function called lookup. Lookup is a function which actually holds or get the value that is sitting in related business object to the primary business object. Dependent right. What is the thing I said? Lookup is a function. Now we need to set the lookup field. What is the lookup field? Where you want to get independence. Is it like we are finding out a common field for both the business objects? No, we will be finding a related business object, actually not a kind of common. There should be a kind of related field. We need to get dependent, actually the one I'm looking for. It's in a dependency, the multi-instance field. This lookup is not identifying. What we can do in order to identify that multi-instance field, we'll just do one more calculation. See if it starts single instance. Since it is multi-instance, your lookup was not identifying. I'm creating one single instance condition, not all the different sets. I don't want to go different condition or the condition is true. Actually use this thing, it's true. And what is the value that you need to get? I've created a single instance that actually returns dependent from dependence. Now I can use this value in my lookup. What I want to get? I wanted to get dependent value. I can also use dependent because that is coming from the single instance which is sourced as dependence. We have taken multi-instance field in single instance and we were able to get dependent. And similarly, you can also get the relation also. Whatever field that you are taking in related to business object for dependence, you can take that now. You can take a relationship. Anything related dependence, now you should be able to take. Let's take dependent. Oh, I don't need to use any kind of related business object. I can remove this. Let's have worker business object. See, anything can be used in your report. Remove the second grade business object. the same dependent. Now, at the same time, you can also use the same variable function to get relationship also. You just copy this one. This now you got someone listening how to use lift ups. Sorry, I'm at my line. Got this? I'm disconnected. I just joined back. You know the usage of lookup now. I've used one more example. I think you might have got disconnected during that time. I was able to get dependent rate for under worker business object. I was able to look up and get dependent. And similarly, now I've tried with relationship also. Dependent is kind of a rate of business object and relationship you can get. This is what we need to get instead of using related business object. You can use a lookup to get all the values into the primary business object and populate in a report. Understood. I'm at. You want to give another example? Oh, yes, please. But before that, let me give you a kind of scenario. Since independent is a kind of one business object, right? In order to get this, we use this as a kind of related business object. And from this, we use to get dependent relationship or not in a report. Now, what we thought is instead of going for related business object, let's have all the values from the primary business object. Generally, the function called lookup will be used in order to get a value that is sitting in a related business object. Lookup is a function which actually pulls the value from a related business object. Lookup. We used to actually work, but since the dependence is a kind of whatever we have here is a kind of multi-instance field. Since you know that dependence is a kind of multi-instance field, lookup was not able to identify this one. This dependence is kind of in a multi-instance field which lookup was not able to identify. Lookup only looks for text values and single instances, but it will not look for multi-instance. And that's the reason why we actually created one more characteristic with single instance function and use this value dependence. That's how we are seeing dependence. We have used and called dependent from there. And similarly, We have used the same characteristic again in lookup to get the value. Now it has returned and now dependent, I am able to get. In the same scenario, in order to get employee review, manager rating. Manager rating will be part of employee reviews only. Now get me the manager rating for me of the employee review. How do you look? Any guess? Sorry, can I please repeat the question? Manager rating employee reviews. For performance review, every employee will be given the rating rate from manager. Now, in order to get manager rating in a report, what we will be using? Definitely it has to be a kind of related business object. First, let's try under worker if there is any manager rating values there. If not, the council will look for it. We don't have manager rating here. Let's see. I need to use this one. It should be getting manager rating. Since I have used the related business object, I am able to. But the request and requirement is do not use any kind of related business object. All the values should be from worker business object. If you want to get that one, what do you have to do? What do you have to do? We are going to create lookup or calculator field. Look. And when you will be able to do lookup when your value is a single instance. When your value is a single instance, you will be able to create a lookup. But when it is a multi-instance, still you can use lookup. But there would be one more, calculator fields created as single instance and call that single instance into lookup and get the value into the primary business object. Now our value is sitting in, the single instance only. I think it would be one lookup will work now. Now if I wanted to get, and it's the overall rating for worker only. I'm going to go for worker only. Get that value? And now see if both will be returning the same value or not. We'll see. Amit, I have a question. Like in the business object, you selected a calculated field, right? Like before creating the calculated field, you had something else, right? The employee review. What is that? Now manage the rating. I've used the calculated field. Let's see if both return the same value. Both returns a blank value. I think manage the rating is not good, but generally we'll take one more example. Now get your question. If we go to the report, first you added a related business object, right? When you started the example and you showed me the single instance, can you add the same field again? This is here. My question is like business in the business object column. Can we add a field? Because this was a field, right? Single instance field. Even anything can be used as a business object. Even I can use this one as a business object. Its dependent is there. This logic I'm not able to get. I mean, field is something like which holds the value and it returns some value to us, right? How we are using. Even worker is a field. I'm saying worker is a kind of business object, right? Even worker is also a field. Let me see. I can use this kind of business object. I can get. Your question is open space. How can this can be used as just a field, right? You're asking, right? Or let's say we're using worker as a primary business object, right? Now what is on, say if we go to fields, which is the thing? Worker is also a field. Whatever business object that I'm saying, what is a business object? Business object is nothing but which holds the values, which holds values in the form of fields and instances. That's the meaning of business object, right? There is no underlying meaning other than this. Business object is nothing but which holds the value in the form of fields and instances, and even which you are using it as a field. For worker, you are using employee and concatenation, sorry name, hire date, and supervisor organization. You're using a field. But even worker is also a field. And that's the reason why you're able to use here to have a worker as a field. Worker is a field of worker business object itself. Worker is a field of worker business object. Sorry, Amit, if I'm confusing you. What will be the value I'm getting in worker? Like, is it the worker name? Worker name you will be getting. That's fine. Because worker is a business object and it has a field worker, and that is going to return us the worker name. Right. But my question is, we are creating a calculated field. It's like a field that it has only instances, right? It doesn't have another field. Am I right? No, you see this. The single instance that I will use, this one is a field, right? If I use this as a business object, since it is holding a primary business object, any business object field here, if I use this as a kind of business object, this can be used as a kind of, umbrella under which you can have fields. If I take this one, I was able to get dependent name here. Similarly, I can use that as a business object. I can use that as a business object and can get all the values from the dependent business object. If I'm getting dependent. Now, if I wanted to get any relationship, I didn't get that relationship because I've used dependent depends the kind of source field here. I've used dependence as a source field, and this source field is actually making a difference to give this value. Whatever dependent value this source field is containing, you're getting the value here. And also, when you create this calculated fields, and when you wanted to have a single instance field rather than using the same field, you can also use this as a kind of business object, and from this you can get the field values. Because you've used dependence as kind of object. In this field, in this calculated field, you've used dependence as a kind of object, right? That actually matters here. You're just a single instance is not a kind of a field. The reason why you're able to get the values in the report is because you're maintaining primary business object as a dependent. When I say primary business object is nothing but a business object, this single instance category field is a holding business object field called dependence. That is the reason why you're able to manage to return the data. What I understand is there is a business object worker and there is a business object dependent, and they both have one common field dependent. Through that, you're pulling all the other information from the dependent business object. Is that right? I think you can say the join kind of thing you can think of. Worker is a kind of business object, right? Under worker, what is the related business object? Given it is a related business object, right? Since in the dividend is when I say dependent is a related business object which actually has multi-instance. Dependence can have multiple values, right? Can have relationship, can have, dependent, it's a kind of multi-instance field. I've actually used it as a source here and was able to get dependent. And similarly, in another example that I was seeing employee review, this employee review is a kind of related business object that I'm using as a source field in lookup function. And then from that lookup function from the source field, I'm getting the actual value and playing around to get the underlying free. And you can also use that time that as a kind of business object in your report. There is no kind of concept. Only business objects can be used as a kind of object to return the value, even when you actually create such as kind of calculated fields, which is holding a multi-instance field for business object called independent. Now this can play game to return the value that are sitting under this for this business object. It can be created. So go ahead. You can create a calculated field. And if you wanted to return any value as a kind of single instance that you can get. Now, let's say, let me give you a kind of one more example. Now I've used this single instance character field and was able to get dependent rate. Now let's say if I use what is independent. Multi-instance field and there's a single instance field. Now I've used another worker, multi-instance field, and as a single instance I have taken. Now we'll see the difference between these two. You can see is getting multiple values. This is getting multiple values, but if you see here, this is getting single value. Because here you have using, this. Here you have used single instance field and you have directed, you're saying direction. Here we saw two direction from top to bottom. A to Z from top to bottom. Z to A from bottom to top. From bottom to top, get me the first instance. From top A to Z means from first to last, get me first instance. Or from last first, get me first instance. You're saying this one. This matters here. That's the reason why you're getting a kind of value of single. But if I change the sort direction here, I'll be getting a different value. This is currently looking for bottom to top. As a kind of first instance, this is looking. If I change the sorting direction as top to bottom, it will actually return the different value. Now go with your question. You're asking the other question, right? I forgot. I don't know. I was just trying to ask, like if we create a calculated field, it's kind of like relating to business objects. And through that field, we are trying to pull some data from the other business object, right? That's what we're doing to this question. Remember when you wanted to use the calculated field that you have created as a kind of object. Only two functions in it will be getting better. Single instance and multi-instance calibrated field function will allow you to use that as a kind of business object because you're actually managing the source field as an object here. Your object as a kind of source here. That is the reason why you're able to take this to your report as a kind of business object, but you'll not use this one. This lookup you cannot get. Let's try to actually take this. What is the field name that you're taking here? You see, calculated fields are very easy. But if you can understand the logic, it will be easy for you to play around. But if you don't understand the logic, probably it will confuse you a lot. Now you see here what I was doing. This single instance, I also created one lookup right. This lookup calculated field will always return only single instance right. Lookup will only look for single instance. That's why you cannot use it as a business object. You're not using the source it is not holding the source value as a kind of business object, right? No, this one is there. This is a subject. See if I can use or not. Any calculated fields you take which holds the business object as a kind of source that can be used as a business object. But if you directly go, let's take any other example of lookup to see if that can be. Since this one is actually holding single instance, one as a source, and single instance is holding one complete business object as a source, you're able to use this as another business object. But let me see if I actually get any other lookup related fields here. For example, you see dependent relationship manager rating. If you see here this manager rating, the kind of lookup that I'm using the single instance value as a kind of source. This can be actually used in other way also. But since you know the lookup value which I'm using here, this is a kind of source from which you know I'm actually taking the value. That is actually used as a source business object in your report. But it might sometimes, it might not work as well. Even if you take it will not be working. Though you will be getting a value, it will be not getting. You need to be actually, testing. You need to actually test whether you are able to return. Sometimes, some meaningless calculations also will be able to form, but that will not give you the result. The proper format that we can understand is when your calculated field is holding business object as a source to get the downstream value. Now here I can say in lookup value, you're using your business object as a kind of dependence from single instance and you're getting this value, which means that you're holding a business object. Now, when you actually use this as a kind of a related business object at source. Sorry, I'm at this point. Can you please repeat here? When you are using a calculated field, that is, using a business object as a kind of source. Now, if you see this lookup, dependent is using single instance field and single instance is holding business object as a source field. When it is using source as a kind of business object field, and when you wanted to return further values from the calculated field, that can be considered. Since this is a source you're using, even this single instance also I can use as a business object. This also I can use as a business object, and I will be getting still. My dependent will be the source. But only the thing is I will be getting single values because I'm using single instance as a business object. I'll be getting value. But if I'm using worker as dependence, what I'll be getting? I'll be getting multiple values because dependent is a kind of multi-instance. If you see here, if I take this and this as a kind of business object, and if I give dependent, I'll be getting only one value because I'm using a kind of single instance here. Single instance is a kind of business object and dependent as a kind of field. Now I'll be getting only single value. But if I go to worker and dependence is a kind of multi-instance field, I'll be getting multiple values. Because the same example, if you take worker as a kind of business object and dependent I've taken as a field. I've taken it as a field also. If you see here, this is also a business object. Dependent is also a kind of business object. And also under worker, I've taken it as a field. But again, if you go here, if any dependent field that you wanted to return, you use this as a kind of business object. Here you have got 3 examples. Now, if you run, what will be the result? Worker, you'll be getting number of multiple components. This one, I've taken this one, I've taken multi-instance as a kind of business object. Now, if I use single instance as a kind of field, I'll be getting one dependent. And the same, you'll be getting this case also. This too will be behaving the same because this has been used as a source in the below field. These two will be returning the same value because the same dependence is a kind of business object which has been sourced here. And that is the reason why you'll be getting the same value. Let me run the report. Lookup and single instance are two interrelated. Probably you need to understand how those are getting synced, how those are getting related. If you understand that one, I think lookup would be a kind of easy for you, and most of your complex reporting will require lookup. That's why you need to understand more about lookup and single instance. How these two are getting linked, kind of thing you need to understand. If you see here, I got dependent in the kind of single column. When I use dependent as a kind of business object, here I'm getting 3 values in a single rows. But when I use the calculated field called single instance as a business object, I'm getting only one value. The reason why? The reason why is you're sorting the field dependence. You're getting a sort field called dependent from top to bottom, from first to top, from first to last. Which dependent comes in the first row, first instance. I can say first instance. your single instance will look for that only. It will not look for multi-instance because single instance is a kind of function that we use that will give single value. Now we have used this one. And if you go to the report, there is a reason why you're seeing as you're getting a single value. If you want to get multi-instance value here, you need to actually use dependence you're getting. Similarly, you can take this one with the calculated field. Now we know you have this value, you wouldn't be needing this again. But as an example, I'm saying just go for multi-instance one and get multi-instance value added here. Or let me create and show you. Actually, your presentation will be having at least some sense of it. Actually, Amit, I'm able to understand, but some flows not, like, getting connected. Is there a chance, like, you can show it to me in a diagrammatic format? Like, like this field goes here and pulls these values, something like that in a diagrammatic format. Maybe not today, even in tomorrow's session, like if you can. I'll try to create a code for you to give you some kind of understanding. Thank you. Let's create this one and see if that can give you a better understanding. Create a count field. Or use a function called multi-instance. Now, what are you using in this multi-instance calibrated field in order to get multiple values? I'm using now, like all the dependents because I'm using multi-instance. But what's the difference between any is true and is true? Both are the same. Both will be the same. Any in the sense means if you're using a kind of business object, it will be looking for all the values, and if anything that satisfies as a true, it will get the one. Is true is also a similar thing, but is a kind of look for a single value. If dependent is there, you're giving the dependent, and if you're taking is true, it will look for single value, and anything that comes as a satisfied value, real value, it gives. But when you're using a multi, this thing dependence, and if you're using any other field, there any true is nothing but which looks complete business object, which could complete business object, and anything can be used which can be satisfied. Is Lookup is a kind of important category fields which will be helpful for you in most of the complicated reports. Now we can use. Since you know this is used as a field in the report, this calculated field is used as a field. You're getting multiple values. This is used as a field. You're getting multiple values. Now what if I use as a field? I use this as a kind of business object. What I'll do? Single instance. I'm getting single instance because the value of dependent I have is a kind of single instance. If you go into that calculations of dependent, it shows like ascending or descending, and this is going to return the first value based on ascending or descending. No, multi-instance will not look for first and last. Single instance will be looking for that. If you see here, this is a multi-instance. This is single instance. Single instance will look for direction, ascending order and descending order. It will look, but your multi-instance will not look for. It will return all the values. Single instance will look for direction and whichever is getting satisfied. There are three dependents. One would be a kind of for in first sequence as a kind of date of birth or anything. One would be in primary sequence and the next one would be in secondary and the next one would be. Now what it will be looking is, it will be looking for ZTA from bottom to top. It will the first occurrence. If you take what you will be getting. Third value beginning. First change. Second change. Now we are saying from bottom to top. You are saying bottom to top. First occurrence. You will be getting the third change. If you go for A to Z first occurrence, you will be getting the first thing. First change you will be getting. You are giving us such kind of direction here. If you take my example, whatever I was saying, you will be getting only one dependent here. That's what I mean. You will be seeing the differencer, the single engine. Single engine will work on a certain direction that you give, but this also makes a lot of difference. You need to know how to use this certain direction based on the condition. And then you can play around with complex reports and complex characteristics. We'll try to do some more examples related to lookups to get you a kind of sufficient understanding in taking multiple values. But I believe like calculated field is the most important part, right? And reporting. It is most important and it will change the entire layout of your report. Calculated fields are. If you're using the complex reports, most of your complex report will be having 9% of your report will be having all the calculated fields. All these functions that I was using that can be used. Because I told you right, I worked in one calculated field. It actually took the value from like 4 business objects. He tried to explain me, but at that time I couldn't understand anything. But it actually, maybe I started with workers and it had a dependent business object and it had another dependent business object. He just tried to pull the record from the fourth business object to the first one. He was just linking two fields and he brought it to the first one. That is what you know. We also did the same. We have used multiple calculated fields just to get you a kind of comparison between the output, whatever you're seeing, just give you a kind of comparison. But what we have done first is we have created, a single instance, one, and single instance is called a lookup, and lookup is used in the reporting. Probably the one that you are seeing 4 to 5. 4 to 5. It might be a valuation function. We would have used, let's say, if employee is active, you need to get A as a kind of value. If employee is terminating, you need to get B as a kind of value. If employee you know on leave, you'll be getting L as a kind of L or leave as a kind of value. Now you need to do multiple values. The problem will be creating. All this is just I'm trying to explain you how many downstream values that you would be needing for such kind of functions. You need to create one specific value called active and if condition satisfies to look for. If employee is active, then return the value or kind of conditionally specified here. We created multiple other functions with different examples. Probably will extend to 1 or 2 more sessions now. We'll try to cover all the major calculations functions to see how it works. Please do like, share and subscribe to our channel. For more information, contact us sales@upptalk.com.